And good evening and welcome to the Kaufman Corner podcast. Back with you as always, not quite as always, a little bit different. We pinch hit tonight. The good doctor, Dr. Rany Jazayerli, on vacation with the family. A little well-deserved vacation for Rany Jazayerli. So pinch hitting tonight, David Lesky, great friend of the program, my radio show on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Of course, author of the Inside the Crown blog podcast. This is a podcast. That's a blog. His great blog, Inside the Crown, required reading if you're a Royals fan. Not only incredible quality, but incredible quantity as well. David Lesky joins us. My name is Soren Petro from Sports Radio 810 WHB. You can catch my work at 810WHB.com. Thank you very much for joining us here tonight, where we actually have some positivity. Earlier this week, we had not an emergency podcast, but at least an unscheduled and not our normal Sunday night podcast to break down the trade deadline. See-ish was what the word was. And David, maybe we'll get your thoughts on that as well as we progress through the evening. But now some real positivity, right? Like if that was underwhelming at the trade deadline for maybe what some Royals fans expected, taking 3 out of 4 from the Red Sox with the return of Eric Hosmer to Kansas City is certainly a positive, and doing it with an incredibly youthful lineup filled with homegrown players. Just your reaction overall to what we saw with the series with the Red Sox.
Yeah, I mean, it was fun. It was fun to watch those young guys actually play. It was, let's see, 60.7% of the plate appearances since the deadline. So not just the series, but since the deadline have been from rookies. Like that's a really high number. And so, yeah, it's going to lend itself to some ups and downs, I think. But this past weekend, there were a lot of ups. I mean, you go the first game of the series and MJ Melendez leading off with a home run, then doing it again yesterday. Then having 6 RBIs today. Right. I mean, just everything that he did this weekend. Look, the rookies putting up the numbers that they did today. They were 9 for 19, I think, all the RBIs. It was a lot of fun to watch. And I mean, you know, we saw, let's see, Lynch pitched on yesterday. And then I'm trying to remember who was Bubic Thursday?
Thursday Wednesday? Or Friday. He was one of them early on.
He was Thursday, yeah. So you had those two pitch. I mean, Greinke is fun from a Greinke perspective, but you know, the young pitching is what you want to pair with the bats to see. And I thought both Bubic and Lynch pitched pretty well. I mean, Lynch didn't have great stuff, but he got it done on a really tough night to pitch. I don't know. It just seemed like they were having more fun than they have in the past. It seemed like they were, you know, just enjoying playing baseball, which I don't think we saw a lot of in the first 2.5 months of the season. I don't know. It was a fun series to watch. Even Friday night when they lost, I mean, they put up a fight. They scored 3 runs in that 8th inning. It just felt different. It felt like a different team, a different experience. And I don't know. It was great to watch. And like I said, it may not always be that way. There may be a series like they got shut out 3 days in a row. Was that just last week, 2 weeks ago, whatever it was? It's going to happen. There's going to be these moments, but the good, I think, outweighs the bad, at least as far as the enjoyability factor to watch them.
There's no doubt about that. And, you know, and I'm going to give some numbers. We're going to ask which one's more true. A true indicator of what the Royals are right now here in a second when it comes to the runs scored, runs against versus the wins and loss record. But, you know, I guess, you know, is there a feeling that in your mind that they're turning a corner, or is this baseball happens, right? I always like to break it down to like the NFL, right? If this were the NFL in a 162 game season, 4 games is like a quarter of football. Right.
Right.
That's what it is on the season. So, you know, and even 17 games, it's like 1 game, right? They're 8-9 since the All-Star break. So do you get the sense that this is a turning of the corner, or just baseball happening?
Yeah. I mean, it's probably a little bit of baseball happening, right? I mean, it's bad teams are going to win games. Good teams are going to lose games, all that. And look, the Red Sox are not a good team. I don't think. I think that they could be, but they're not. But at the same time, we've talked about this on the show. The plate appearances that we see from Melendez, Pasquantino, Prado, you know, even Michael Massey today worked that walk. Everybody was walking in that inning, but still, he worked the walk there. These guys put together the best plate appearances on the team. They're better than all of the veterans. And so offensively, I think you're starting to see the corner turn. I'm a little bit, I don't know. I guess I still need to see more with the pitching because of just how bad it has been. But I mean, look, Brady Singer, since he's been back, has been good. Like, not really good. I mean, not just good for Royals, good in general. Daniel Lynch has been up and down with injuries, but he started to strike guys out and limit walks. And I mean, it was something like a 28% strikeout rate and 7% walk rate in his last 7 starts or 6 starts, whatever it is. That's what you want to see. And Chris Bubich is giving innings. And I mean, there's some room to go, but it feels like this might be the beginning of the tide turning a little bit. And I don't know. I found myself watching this game today and thinking about yesterday's game and, even Thursday and Friday and thinking, is this optimism? Am I supposed to feel this way about this team? Because they seem like they might be, like, when they're good, it feels like they're actually good rather than just they happen to win a game. And I think that's a big difference.
And I'm trying to look did you see an attendance on today's game?
Was it today or yesterday? It might have been. I think it was 19.
Okay,
but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, in that range, because that's one of the questions. And listen, I don't think just because
it's 15 today.
How much? 15 today? Okay,
15 today. Yeah.
Hot day in the summer, and largely baseball attendance is driven. That the idea of a huge walk-up crowd doesn't really exist in baseball anymore. Advanced ticket sales are where it's all at, and when you haven't had success, it's tough to have people come rushing in to buy tickets, right? Like when you're not successful, you don't sell season tickets, and it's tougher to get that number up. I'd be interested to see what the ratings are, how much the ratings are going up, because I know on my radio show, what I hear all the time on 810 is, well, if they just play the young guys, I'd be thrilled. I'd watch it. I'd be satisfied. And that's true. And I think we're getting that now. Right. And I think there is an uptick. There's definitely much more of an interest in the ball club right now. But I'm wondering how long that lasts, right? Like, we want something different, and because that's not going to last for 5 years, right? Will you still be watching this team if it's these guys and they're in last place? No, they've now become, they now suck, right? It's only while there remains ceiling to the ball club does that interest you. Okay, I can see where this is going. Once you get there and it hasn't gone to where you want to go, it sucks and we're not watching anymore. So I'm sure there's a spike in ratings, and I do think, but I will say this. The Red Sox helped a little bit today. I saw some tweets out there about, like, the Red Sox are doing everything they can defensively. The kid in center field, whiffing on balls. But I immediately thought back to, I remember when the worm finally turned in 13 and then in 14 and even through the World Series, and into 15. I remember having the conversation with Danny Klinkscale. Danny, at some point along the way, cited a lot of greasy wins, right? That the Royals had a lot of, and I was like, and I thought that was perfect. It was like, okay, yeah, this has got to end. This where the other team kicks the ball around, and that's how you end up winning the game 4-3. But they had 2 errors, and that was the difference. And I came to realize, no, it'd just been so long since I'd seen a good team. That's what good teams do to bad teams.
They take advantage.
Yeah, and the Red Sox are a completely uninspired team right now that has felt the season slip away from them. At one point, they were in the mix. They're not. They're looking for the door. The Royals have young guys trying to prove themselves, and they're playing sharper baseball. And so I think, while you can always find reasons to poke holes in what's going on, that's baseball. If you don't screw it up, if you don't walk the whole world, if you don't hit batters, if you don't have pass balls, if you don't kick it around the infield, if you just string some hits together, if you hit some extra base hits together, like, that's how you win baseball games. And so from that standpoint, I do feel like you can start to hang your hat on the fact that this is real. I'm not ready to say they're done. Like, we might be a year from now or 2 years from now, or we might see the Royals even see it on their own in advance and make a move this offseason, which we'll talk about the offseason here in a little bit. But I can see the framework now coming together. I can see Michael Massey's got a glove, right? Nicky Lopez can glove it. Bobby Wood Jr. I know is grading towards the bottom of shortstops, but he's a real big league shortstop, right? I think he'll get even better along the way. There's no, and if he's over at third base, you go, okay, it looks pretty good. I don't know. We want to talk about him. If we're talking about Icky Lopez at short, I'll listen to it. But you can see it. Prado can really glove it at first base, right? It's starting to look kind of real, and I think it's hard for Royals fans to be when you've been beaten down as hard, and it's not 30 years without the playoffs, and 400 lost seasons in 5 years. It's been a couple of them, and it's been a while, and there was only a short little window of success. And so I get it why Royals fans might be slow to come around to this team, but I actually think it's okay. Maybe you don't want to dive into the pool, but go ahead and step a couple of steps into it and get your butt wet on the steps into the pool. Enjoy how it feels on your feet. There's no reason to shy away from it. That's how I would describe where it is right now, because the pitching's still a big question.
Well, yeah, but also, I mean, from a fan perspective, I mean, we can talk about whether or not whether or not the Royals actually are close or whatever, but what is the harm? I mean, I know you're going to get yourself hurt, but other than that, what's the harm of enjoying this team? Really? I mean, there are a bunch of young guys who are playing well, and they're not, I don't know. They're just having a good time. It seems like, and like I said, you don't just want them to have a good time, but they're playing good baseball. You mentioned taking advantage of opportunities. The Royals today gave up, Taylor Clark gave up a 2-run homer in the top of the 7th, and they came back and scored 2 immediately. I know that Duran was, not kicking the ball, but he couldn't catch the ball in center field, and that led to a couple runs. But they took advantage of it. You're right. They took advantage of what the team gave them. They haven't taken advantage of what the team gave them in years. It's been, I mean, it was like 2017 before the deadline when they were in a playoff spot. That's the last time I feel like they took advantage of what teams gave them. And so I'm not going to poo-poo that. Like, good for them. They did it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, if we're going to hang every loss around their neck, which I think is fair for the fans to do, then all the successes are theirs as well. You can't be lucky in your successes and earn all your failures. And that's one of the things that frustrates me. And I got a tweet today, which first let's I don't want to go too far from here, but I do want to mention this before I get too far, and I can't find it because I want to give Catman a little love, because he's one of our regulars. He says ratings would go up if Bally's wasn't awful. Listen, I'm not one to bash the broadcast. I think the broadcasts are fine broadcasts, right? But Bally's, we know the fight. That's lots of people can't see Bally's. That's part of the problems as well. And all the things that's going into it. But here's where I will bash them. And Curtis sent me this today. I was texting around with Curtis Siebel, who works with me on the radio. And he said on the Bally's game replay, they did the quote, due to time constraints, we move ahead to later in the game. The thing that and moved from the middle of the 5th to the top of the 6th, skipping over the Royals' 3-run 5th inning. Then they skipped over 4 of the 6 runs the Royals scored in the 8th. What's the point of replaying the game if you're going to skip over that? And that's why I can't tell is I don't know if Bally's does Red Sox games as well. And it's like they had one group that put together okay. So then it wasn't like they were putting it together for Boston fans. Like, let's cut out some of the pain and screw it. We're not going to bother to do too, because who could possibly be watching this Royals team out there, maybe not knowing how high the attendance or the ratings are for Royals baseball. But that's the kind of like, when you do that, when you don't even take the time to edit up the game, which first of all, it's a replay on a channel that doesn't exist except when the Royals are playing. So why would you need to skip ahead? This isn't ESPN.
You've got to get to World Poker Tour, okay?
Do they even have any other? And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe on other cable systems, but I have DirecTV. Not bragging, just telling you. I have DirecTV, and when the Royals are done, I get the DirecTV logo and music. Like, it's over. And so we don't even get the replays, right, on DirecTV. You get the game, and that's it. And so is it not like that? Is there a real channel that the Royals are on other cable outfitters that they actually have something to get to? Because I get it when ESPN goes,
no.
"Oh, due to time constraints, we're moving ahead in this 5-hour college football game from 9 years ago we showed you that we're just killing time with because we actually have live programming coming up." But is there even anything coming on Bally's?
It's seriously World Poker Tour, and
which none of that is live.
No, none of that's live. There's occasionally, I think, beach volleyball, maybe, that I'm sure gets upwards of 15 people watching every 4 days. I don't know. I mean, the only time I turn on Bally's is, sometimes my wife and I will go to dinner, and we'll turn it on so the dogs have some sound in the house, and I want to have it on for when we get back so I can watch. And I have to find the channel to watch the game, and they have the rally on before, which is like their, I don't know, some like all sports show where they're trendy and they get together and talk. That's the only thing I've seen on there other than poker and beach volleyball.
Yeah. Okay. I love this. Tyler says, I'm paying $20 a month for Bally's app and it's constantly lagging and Chromecast is constantly crashing. Frustrating to say the least. I mean, look,
it's a great product.
Yeah, it is. And Royals ownership inherited this. And frankly, the deal was struck with Fox and not Bally's, and it was a sale. So, there really is absolute plausible deniability by everybody over at the Royals. So I, for one, am not going to pound the desk about the Royals needing to do this. They inherited a contract. We have local ownership. I'm not going to bitch. It sucks. I hope that I'm sure they
have a 10-year deal.
Well, and I'm sure they're investigating ways to get out of it early. Right?
Yeah,
there may not be one, but I'm sure they're at least trying. But it is,
or at least ways to go around it and be on other platforms, because I think John Sherman really wants more of a streaming presence than what Bally offers. I don't know if they can do it, but again, it's a short contract too. The last one was 20 years. This is 10, I believe, maybe 12. I can't remember, but at least it's short in TV terms, in sports contract terms.
Which I think may be a good thing when you consider the streaming services that are going to come into play that maybe will be part of the option, which might piss off all the fans even more when it's all said and done. We'll see where it goes from there. But yeah, I get it. I get it that it's frustrating that all that's going on. But the Royals are 8-9. They've been outscored 81-69 in those 17 games. Right, that's a 12-run negative differential. It's not like they're 8-9 and they've outscored the opposition by 2 runs. 12 runs is significant. Which one's more of an indicator in your mind of where the Royals are, being outscored by 12 runs or being 8-9? Generally speaking, you know this better than I do, David. The run differential is a better indicator of who you really are.
Sure. And I think it probably is the better indicator, truthfully. But at the same time, when you look at where the Royals don't have what they're going to need to bulk up, a lot of it's their bullpen. They're minus 12. Remember, they gave up 8 runs on that Friday night game against the Yankees. That's 6 of the 12 runs in the run differential right there, that game. So I think in that small of a sample, you can kind of start to look at the individual games and say, okay, how many of those 17 games have they been in? And I haven't looked that closely to know the exact answer, but I think for the most part, if you take away, if you take away that game, you take away today's game, it's only fair to take away the outliers. But I think they've generally been a lot more competitive than a minus 12 run differential would indicate. If they play the way they've been playing, and they do this over 50 games, I think the run differential is going to be a lot closer, I guess is what I'm getting at. But, in general, I think the run differential is important, and I think it means something moving forward.
There are batters that have to get better, right? Nick Prado has got to get better. You do appreciate the fact that he's walking and even though his batting average is well below 200, his on base is still above 300. That speaks to the greater overall good. And you can look down through the Royals organization and there are guys getting on base on a regular basis all over the place. There's still some guys that, like, I forget the kid's name, who today went 46 consecutive stolen base down in A-ball without being caught stealing. But he's batting $2, right?
Right.
He doesn't get on base. That's old school Royals. The current score of the organization. But overall, there's obviously an emphasis on getting on base and being more selective at the plate and having an approach, and it's showing across the board. I mean, are we looking at this team? You and I have talked about it. We've mentioned it on the radio show a number of times that If you look at the 2012 Royals at 172 games, and this team still could do that of their top 12, because Baseball Reference gives the pictures of their top 12 guys by WAR, of their top 12, 10 of the 12 would be on the 2014 World Series 2 years later, and 9 of the 12 would be on the championship team, right? So that there were guys who wasn't there. James Shields wasn't there for 13 and 14. He wasn't in that mix, and he would play a very big role. But a lot of the pieces were there, even in the midst of only winning 72 games. Can you see it now around the diamond? Like, is it Melendez and Perez catching and DHing? Is it Prado at first? Is it Pasquantino? Those foursome making it up, maybe, or maybe even probably a trade with one of them when it comes, at least one of those four to make this fit. Is it Massey at second base? Nicky Lopez at short? Bobby Witt Jr. going back over to third base? Like, is it, in the outfield, are we seeing the outfield throw in Edward Olivares, who's hurt right now? But are these the guys that we're going to see if this team is contending in 2 or 3 years?
I think a lot of them. Yeah. I mean, I pulled up the Baseball Reference page. Benintendi's not going to be on the team in 2 years.
Right.
Taylor's not going to be on the team in 2 years. But then you're looking at Brady Singer and Scott Barlow and Salvi, and Greinke's probably not, although I guess I shouldn't say that. Who knows with Greinke ever? But
right.
I mean, Dylan Coleman, I think he could be a really key reliever on this team in 2 years. Bobby Witt Jr., obviously. Daniel Lynch, obviously. And then it's Gabe Spires on there, which is not terribly comforting, but he's
right.
number 12. But it's easy to see with these guys aren't going to be in the top 12 because they just came up. But yeah, I think you can. I think you can see somewhere in that group. You mentioned maybe trade one. Look, Melendez has been playing a lot of left field. And it's not always pretty, and right field too. But I think you can kind of see, okay, he does pretty well going left to right. Can he go in and out? I don't know. We'll find out. He needs an offseason to work on it. I mean, I thought last year that it was going to be a good opportunity to get him some work in the winter, and they spent the time at third base, and he hasn't played at third base. I don't get why they made that change or when they did, but I could see him becoming a solid enough outfielder with work in the winter. So maybe they don't trade one of them. But yeah, I mean, with Bobby Witt and, you mentioned Nicky Lopez at shortstop. Michael Garcia is a possibility too. They like him a lot. I don't know that he can hit enough, right, but they like him. And look, they could always sign a free agent shortstop. There's a few out there. So, I mean, that's a possibility too. If they say, hey, we're really close, we're going to spend a little money. We're going to go out and I don't think it's Carlos Correa. Although, gosh, wouldn't that be a perfect fit? But, is it Dansby Swanson? Does he leave the Braves? He plays good defense. I think he's probably going to be overpaid, but there are names out there. So I think you can look at this team and say, there's going to be some guys missing and there's going to be some guys added that, from what we see today. But if they were to win in 2024, it would not surprise me to see most of these guys out there.
First of all, if Dansby Swanson left the Braves, there would be no price too big for the Royals.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, absolutely.
Anyone who leaves the Braves will be brought in to the Royals, we would assume. Certainly, if they want to work in the front office, they will be. And that's not all bad. I want to be clear, but we know the passion that's there for them. I think, and I'm a Nicky Lopez, and I think, was it you in one of your Inside the Crowns that was writing about where Nicky Lopez was this time last year?
Yeah.
On Thursday or Friday, I was reading it on vacation. Even on vacation, I check out my Inside the Crown.
That's why you're the best.
Thank you. That's why you're the best, actually. It's must read even when you're on vacation.
Perfect.
I thought that was interesting, and he's behind the pace of last year. So even if he closes with the same kind of efficiency, the numbers would be down. But you don't have to be 350 on base and a 300 batting average if you can play Gold Glove short. And Jeff Passan thought he should have won the Gold Glove at shortstop last year. And you can live with if you can just get on base, you can have no power. That's okay if the rest of the lineup hits and you really defend and you play a premium defensive position. He does at short or even second base, either one of those spots. He's fine there. The question is, do they have enough bats elsewhere? Do you see? Let's start with Melendez, because I know you wanted to talk about that tonight. Where does he fit? You touched on left field, right field. Is the bat good enough? When you see what was the launch angle today? It wasn't 45%. That's what I had in my head.
It's got. I don't know what it. Let me.
It was
I
like
can.
39% or something.
I
mean,
had
it
it
was
up a second ago.
complete uppercut swing, and
39.
yeah, 39% was the launch angle, and so he got under it a little bit and still powered it out. Is that bat? I mean, he's got a minor league home run title to his credit. Is that bat play well enough to play a just man the position left field? I mean, can he be a +2? I heard it once described the plan for Billy Butler was once described, and left field was once described to me as he's a -1 +2. Like he'll be -1 out there in the field, but he's going to be +2 with his bat. I think he ended up being a -3 and a +1, and so they got him to DH, and that's where he belonged.
I don't know. 3 might be kind. -3.
Can Melendez be an even, a -1 out there, and a +2 at the plate? I mean, does that bat carry left field thunder?
I think he's athletic enough that he could be a good enough left fielder. He's not going to turn into Alex Gordon or Andrew Benintendi even. But I think the bat does play because he strikes out some. Yes, he has some swing and miss to his game, but he also makes more contact than I think people realize. And then I looked it up. Since the break, 297, 356, 563. I think he's played all but one game. So that's 16 games. It's a nice chunk of playing time. It's not huge. It's a 10th of a season. But he's looked really good. And, we talked about the launch angle today of 39 degrees. The one on, what was it, Thursday, I think was 23 degrees. So he's hitting home runs in different ways. He's hitting line drives, fly balls, all that. It seems like he has a good idea of what he wants to do with pitches. He gives a great plate appearance. Obviously, no guarantees, and there's still development that needs to go. But I think that if he can, work at left field or right field, whichever one they want to do, I think he can be decent enough that the bat carries it. Again, we've seen guys come up and look great and then struggle and never to be seen again. But I don't know. I just feel like his approach at the plate should allow him to continue to be solid, even if the average drops a little bit. Even if he goes, I mean, he's hitting, what is it, 238 right now or something like that. I don't know the exact number. 236. Even if he's he's got to be better than that. But even if he's a 260 hitter, he's going to carry a 340 on base percentage, and he's probably going to have a 250 ISO, 200 at minimum. So then you're looking at a 500 slugging percentage. I think that plays.
Yeah, and I think does the rest of the outfield then play around him, right? Let's talk about Drew Waters. Let's throw another positive out there for this ball club. Drew Waters has been sensational. I had some folks asking about him and even maybe chiding Keith Law a little bit, who when the Royals made the trade said, look, I've never had him in my top 100. I'm just not a Waters believer. I don't think he's selective enough at the plate. He's been more than selective with the Royals since coming over. His numbers weren't bad, by the way, with the Braves. No. He was blocked and seemed to be kind of treading water, seemed to be kind of stalled a little bit. He's exploded with the Royals. He would seem to be the next guy in line. Waters in center does Isbell and Olivares and Melendez and some combination and Eaton. Is that a combination that fits? If they're not going to go out and trade some of these position players.
Yeah, I mean, there's more than that too, because Tyler Gentry, who's in AA, everything I've heard is that he's going to get a chance to make the team next year, which they say that a lot. So it could very well just be, hey, he's going to be in spring training. But he's a right-handed bat, which is nice on a very left-handed team right now. So there's, maybe a little bit of balance needed. And he's hits for average, hits for power. He's a pretty decent defender. So he's a possibility there too. I think that they probably have enough to figure out an outfield, which means they also have enough to make some moves if they want to trade somebody or some buddies. But I think you can. It all does depend on Drew Waters to me, because with MJ Melendez in left, and if you go with Isbell and right, that's less important. But I feel like you need a really good center fielder, because Melendez, as good as he could be, I don't think he's ever going to be more than average. So you got to have somebody next to him who can go get it. Drew Waters can go get it. So if he can hit, if he's a good enough hitter, I think the outfield's fine. I mean, I think they can figure it out. It's They need to get it right. They can't waste time. They can't be putting Hunter Dozier out in right field 3 days a week. But I think that they've got enough there. It's just a matter of finding that right combination.
Yeah, and that's and so the position players start to come into focus, right? We start to like it all starts to fit some way. There's even depth, as you pointed out, to where we could see prospects go for whatever it is they need. And what they still need is pitching. We're seeing promising returns, from Daniel Lynch, certainly from Chris Bubich and Brady Singer's, monster couple of games back to back. And even, if that's his off game after that, then okay, you can live with that. If there's more of the on games that are coming. But how far is that pitching staff? Because you mentioned the bullpen very quietly. The idea that the Royals can always find bullpen is not the case right now. And I think that's where, if you look at what they did at the deadline, and maybe we'll get your thoughts here on the deadline, David, there's a lot of arms that project that, although Beck Way pitched well today in a start. I think even Shane Panzini threw a pretty good start today from all the way down in low A ball. And I'm sure they'd love one or two of these guys to come up and be starters and push their way through. But was that what they think is their last move, that now all it is put the oven at bring to a boil and simmer for a little while, and that's going to put it all together, that they've got enough arms in this system and eventually they'll get them right? What do you think of what they were able to get done at the deadline?
I mean, I hope that that's not their idea, because I don't think they're that close on the pitching staff. It's funny because Singer, Bubich, and Lynch, they give you this extra hope, I feel like, because you can say, if this is what they are, they have 60% of a rotation for the next 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. And then you start to throw in, okay, maybe they re-sign Greinke and Keller's back for a year. Okay, that's a starting 5. It's risky because we don't know. But, I think with what they did in the bullpen at the deadline, they got Max Castillo, who I think, there's some talk that I think there's a path for him to start. It probably ends up in the bullpen. And he's a decent reliever. I don't think he's a closer or an 8th inning guy, but I think he can be a useful reliever. You mentioned Beck Way. He could be a reliever fairly quickly if they decide to go that route. I hope they don't. I always think start them until they can't.
Right. I think the Royals think that way as well.
They do. Yeah. That's one of the few areas that they agree with me, or that I agree with them, I guess, is a better way to put it. But there are a handful of arms forgetting the trade deadline. I mean, Jonathan Bolin, he struggled in Double-A in his first 2 starts, but he's back from Tommy John. I'm willing to give that some time. I think that he needs to get his feet under him. I think he can be a starter, but if he's not, I think that could be that the repertoire he has could be a dominant reliever. He's this big guy with upper 90s sinker. I mean, he can pitch. More than any. Jonathan Heasley, I think, is another guy who I think could be a really interesting reliever if they go that route. They need I don't think he can just go to the bullpen. I think that they need to say, hey, we're going to simplify what you do, because he throws 5 pitches, which is great as a starter. But I think they need to say, hey, we want you throwing 97 with your fastball up, and we want you using your slider, and then occasionally mix in a good changeup, and then you can be a good reliever. So there's some work to do there, but they've got some of those guys. It's I don't know. They just don't throw enough strikes is the problem. And at some point you just can't walk guys like that. Dylan Coleman, I mean, he's a guy. If you told me that the Royals win the World Series in 2025 and Dylan Coleman gets the save, I wouldn't doubt you for that, because I think that if they're good, Dylan Coleman is probably their closer, because he's that guy. But what does he have? 30 walks in 44 innings or something like that. It doesn't work. And so they've got to figure out a way for these guys to throw strikes, which then, I mean, that leads into the whole rabbit hole of the organizational philosophy and all that. So
and it's an important one. No, I think it's an important one, because they're having such success on the hitting side that there's a real reason, and I had, again, talk about people tweeting at me. I was just chatting with some folks on Twitter. And one of the things, somebody hit me with would this group have been, would they be in contention if they just brought all these guys up at the beginning of the year? And the answer is no, because Michael Massey hadn't played above A ball, and Neither had, I don't know, there's one of the other guys. Eaton hadn't played above A ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like the guys that you're seeing, there's some of them that weren't ready. And I think it's, it's okay. This is where I encourage fans to not just sit and root for your predictions, which if you've gotten to the point where you go, all these guys got to be fired. And now it's just, I'm going to work backwards from that premise, and any successes, I'm going to find a way to excuse and say it's not them, because I've already set sail on the new GM, as long as Dayton Moore or JJ McCall is there, I'm not listening. You can't do that. As long as they're here, it's their ball club and their decisions. And I think they've actually done a really good job across the board with the bats. They turned the hitting program around 2 years ago, and I think they've done a pretty good job of bringing guys up when they're ready. I don't think anybody's been suppressed, save maybe Vinny Pasquantino, right? And I still struggle a little bit on that, but we haven't seen him just rip the cover off the ball. The big leagues, a lot of hard hits, a lot of reason to still believe in him. Certainly no reason to send him down because he's making good contact. But the numbers don't say, those dumbasses, what were they waiting on? Right? They say, like, okay,
Right.
they saw something, right? So their scouting eye has been very good on the hitting side of things. And I think the credit should be given to this organization for bringing all these bats along at the appropriate pace. And by the way, and as you pointed out with Gentry and all the other names, acquiring Drew Waters, they continue to acquire and develop more bats. All that being said, 81 runs allowed in 17 games, right? And these are the good times,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is we're talking about, they're doing well. That's more than 5 runs per game that they're giving up. In fact, I had to look at it. What is it? What would that be for the season? Let's see. It'd be 772 runs for the year. All right,
which doesn't seem as bad as I thought it would.
No, I thought it might be worse, but this is their best role, which kind of speaks to the offense. Has got to get going a little bit more because you like to see more runs than that from the offensive side of the equation. But I think the point here is that all this positiveness that's coming on, if Lynch, Singer, and Bubic will, what I said at the All-Star break, and I think I said it with you, is like, what do we want to see? I want to see, at least 2 of those 3 go out there and hang, like, I'd almost say like a 330, right? But certainly sub 350 ERA down the stretch, or at least FIP down the stretch, right? Fielding independent pitching, which is measured like an ERA. Hang that up there and let me go, okay, they found 3 guys. They can hang their hats on those 3 guys. And I'll believe in a Brad Keller or Zach Greinke being a 5. Can't have them both. I mean, what's left of Zach is great, great story, but he's a 5. And, maybe a crafty guy to come in a long stretch in a playoff series, if you need something like that. Keller's a reliever, ideally, right? Because we've seen him be really good early in his career as a reliever. But if he's
that's why I thought teams might want him.
Yeah, I did too. I thought teams like the Rays might go, we can fix this, right? This is the kind of guy we need to go get to finish off our staff. But, and like I said, we mentioned the timelines. Keller's probably out the door before they get there. He certainly hasn't given you enough to extend him. But if, barring those 3 doing that, Asa Lacy is completely lost. I feel like as much as Rany, likes to have his Jacob Junis minute and talk about everything that's going on, and how Junis is turning things around, the Asa Lacy news just never, ever gets any better. I mean, his last time out, if people didn't see this, August 6th, so that was yesterday, 1/3 of an inning, no hits. Okay. He only pitched a third. 5 runs, 5 earned, 1 hit batter, 4 walks. I mean, that's freaking hard to do. How do you do it? I don't even know how you do it.
It's 15 runs on 2 hits in 8 innings since he's been back. That's impressive, honestly. I mean, part of it, I don't know what is going on in AA, but have you looked at the natural?
We rattled off the AA ERAs, and it's
okay.
And by the way, I'm quite confident it's a very big. I know for a fact it's a sore subject with the folks over there, confident, which it should be, but like they don't like it being talked about.
Yeah, well, I mean, then they should do something about it.
Agreed.
I think that if you don't want. It's like, what year was that the Dodgers swam in the Diamondbacks pool? And you're going, you don't want them to swim in your pool. Don't let them win the division on your field.
Right.
there are ways around it, and it's to do better. It's ugly, and yeah, I mean, I think.
Let me ask you this: Have they with their progress on the hitting? Have they earned? Because I know you had a point about 4 weeks ago, 5 weeks ago, where you said that's it, change has to come, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a meltdown, I think, would be fair to say, based upon tweets and your Inside the Crown writings. Have they done enough with the hitting now that you would come off that and say, okay, if you make changes to the pitching, I'm on board?
Yeah, maybe. I think so. I think what they need to do on the pitching side, I don't think just stands with one person, either in the minors or at the big league level. I think it has to be an entire overhaul, like what they did after 2019, because it's just not working. And I mean, I pulled this up a while ago. I don't know if I still have it. I do. I looked at some of the Royals' young pitching. Singer, Bubich, Coar, Heasley, Lynch, all these guys. And I looked at their strikeout percentage and walk percentage, compared with some other 25, 26 and under starters around baseball. And those guys fared pretty well. And, Brady Singer was one of the worst with strikeout percentage, but he's one of the best with walk percentage. And then strikeout to walk ratios, they were all middle of the pack. Nobody was really at the bottom in any category except for Singer with strikeouts. These guys are not there. what they have right now, they're not doing that. And so, whereas you look at the current big league pitchers, you can say, okay, I think they did okay in the minors, and now it's the big league staff that's not helping them get to that next level. I buy that. But look at Alec Marsh, and you can't look at Bolin, really. He's a bad example. But look at Asa Lacy, and look at Drew Parrish in AAA, and look at, Panzini, who has struggled a little bit first go round, but still, like you've said before, they held them back. They should, if you're going to hold somebody back, they need to hit the ground running.
Mazzucato has 9 walks. I've got him.
Yeah.
He's the other one that I don't like to be just beat up on all the time.
It's concerning.
I wasn't going to go there, but now on the year, remember when you could get MILB to work? 48 and a third. He has 39 walks, 60 strikeouts. So I like that, but 39 walks and 48 and a third. And I'd even buy that a little bit if I looked and I saw it 19 hits or 21 hits, right? Which would be incredible in 48 and a third, but you'd be like, okay, he's effectively wild, but man, when it's in the zone, he can get him. Nope. 40 hits, right? Yeah. They still put the bat on the ball. And there's time for him. My frustration all along has been 11 months. I mean, they hid them in the dark for 11 months, those three guys. Okay, that's atypical. That's no longer the way to do things. And so if you're going to do it, you got to be right, and they haven't been right. Those guys have been – it seems like it was 11 wasted months because none of them throw strikes. And then you went out and made a deal – sorry to cut you off again, David.
No, you're
fine. Went out and made a deal where you brought in 3 guys from the Yankees that you called strike throwers because the guys you already have don't throw strikes.
Yeah. And I'd argue Kudrna has been a little better than that.
Yeah, he's the best of the bunch.
He's done a nice job. But, and then so I added in the guys they got from the Yankees with some of those guys and what they're doing now in the minors. And it's been before they made their Royals debuts. But, I mean, TJ Sikkema had the best strikeout to walk ratio in the minors of all of the 25, 26 and under guys when they were in the minors. So that's Joe Ryan, who had a 6.2 to 1. I mean, that was good. Sikkema's was at 6.7 to 1.
Yeah.
So they went out and they seem to target guys who do what they can't teach, it seems like, which I guess there are worse ways to go about it. If you know your weakness, go get what you're weak at. Andrew Hoffman's in there too. He pitched a good game today in AA. I think that there's there's just a disconnect somewhere. And so I think that we can all yell and hoot and holler that Cal Eldred has to go. And I think he does. Right. But I don't think it's just Cal Eldred. And I think it's everybody.
I agree, and I think change has to come. I really don't know how they can go into the next season with everybody intact on the pitching side. I mean, I think this is going to be a real. I believe ownership is still on their side. I don't believe that they are fighting for their jobs at this point. And I think they've actually come through. One of the times I would have told you, and I even had a conversation about this with some folks. I said, the whole Toronto thing was such a bomb around baseball that I'm like, that's the kind of thing that takes people that were on your side and goes, well, wait a minute. I'm defending you to my friends, but now nationally I'm a boob. Like, that's the one that puts you over the top. They've come out the other side of that. The Whit Merrifield trade was vital. And that part of the equation has now moved on. And whether you like the trade or not, it certainly can be deemed, whether it's coincidental or not, they won't tolerate you not playing for this club, but being willing to play for somebody else. Yeah. That was so they went a long way, I think, to repairing themselves. But the conversations I've had in and around the ownership, they seem to be, I think ownership is still in their corner. But I do think that John Sherman's a guy that's been around a team that knows how to pitch. And I think John Sherman's going to want a real explanation. And I don't know what you could possibly tell a man who's knowledgeable about baseball and lives in this town, which I think is an important difference to make compared to, and all uber wealthy people travel a lot. And while everybody in the ownership group has ties to Kansas City, don't all of them call Kansas City home, and they're on the move a lot, but they're all wired into Kansas City much more than the Glass family was, beyond David. Right. Certainly Dan was not wired into Kansas City the way these guys are.
Right.
So when you've got that in your ear, you know what real pitching looks like. I don't know how Dayton Moore, I actually could see, if there are people that Dayton Moore is willing to die for, I could see a shocking conversation that ends with him walking away.
Yeah.
Right. I don't foresee that because I think he wants to put it back together and stand watch on it. And so I think change will come.
I think it will too. I think it's going to happen either way, because I think what you're saying is right. That if Dayton Moore is not willing to do it, then I think somebody else is going to be brought in who is. And look, if Dayton Moore is not with the Royals after the season, he will resign. It will be, hey, I'm leaving to go work with the Urban Youth Academy. Like, no matter what the reality behind the doors is, like, he will not be fired. At least, so that's one thing. But I don't think you can look at what this minor league pitching is doing and say, oh yeah, we're going to run it back next season. It just isn't working. And last night, I heard that John Sherman was outside one of the gates shaking hands with fans as they left. Guys who were there, owners who are at the game, shaking hands with fans leaving, aren't going to say, "Hey, this is perfect. We're good to go." It's just not going to work that way. So, something's changing. Maybe multiple somethings are changing, but something is going to change, and because it has to, it simply has to. And the good thing is, where I'm optimistic about it, this is the group that changed the hitting. And they did it right. So why wouldn't we say they can do it right on this side?
Yeah, and what I want to hear, Dayton Moore said, I think, I don't know if it's an end of the season thing or a going into spring training deal. And I remember asking him, and I said it in what I think is a polite way, but accurate, about how bad the hitting had been in the minor leagues with MJ Melendez and Prado, and Sully Matias was in that group at the time. And he kind of interrupted me and said, it was awful. It's unacceptable. And, I have not heard that. That's what has me concerned. And I'm open to the fact that they're just not going to bury anybody in season. There's no point in making a change. You want the biggest candidate pool out there that you can get. And so change will come this offseason. And in the meantime, they're going to back all their people. That's good management. So I'm not ready to say they don't know what they're doing or don't have a plan until we get to the offseason and they make no changes, or maybe even we get to spring training and it's the same group. Then hellfire and brimstone will be discussed, and it'll be make or break in the early days of the season next year for them. So we got nothing to do but wait there. I do want to hit a couple other things. At home, the Royals are now 12-6 in their last 18 games, hitting .291 and have posted a 3.44 ERA. Are they built for this ballpark? I mean, do we need to give some, again, super 18 games, 10th of the season, pretty much, a little more than 11, 12% of the season. I don't want to draw too big a conclusion, but do we at least like how they're built? Is there an eye towards, okay, while there's some of their pitching practices are being dinged as archaic or behind the times or missing the point, certainly can't throw strikes, that they've identified how their ballpark plays and at least are building to the personality of their ballpark, or is this just coincidence again?
Probably just coincidence more than anything would be my guess. But I mean, the Royals are maybe more aware than any other team about the ballpark they play in, which, for better or for worse, I mean, we hear it all the time. Kauffman Stadium, it's the biggest park, most acreage in the American League, and all that. I mean, I think you could maybe argue the Rockies are the only team that pay more attention to what their park is. So I don't think it's by accident that they're pitching well at home, playing well at home. I think what we've seen from a hitting side, they've got players with legitimate power. All we hear is you can't hit home runs at Kauffman Stadium. You can't hit home runs at Kauffman Stadium. And then every team comes in and hits home runs at Kauffman Stadium. And so it's like, well, which is it, one or the other? Well, they seem to have some guys. I mean, MJ Melendez, no park holds him. Bobby Witt Jr., no park holds him. Salvador Perez, nope, literally. I mean, he's the best of the bunch. When Pasquantino gets into one, no park holds him. And these are guys with power. They would hit it anywhere. So they've kind of maybe shifted toward, hey, we can hit home runs here. You can't hit home runs with David DeJesus guys regularly. You've got to get some big mashers in there. And on the pitching side, I don't know. It just feels very coincidental. I think a lot of it is that the three young guys have pitched really well over the last, month and a half. I mean, Lynch less so than the other two, but I mean, Singer's been good since he came back in May 17th, I think it was. Yeah. Bubic was June, whatever, against the Astros. So those two pitching well, plus Greinke pitches well at home. I think it's just a good park for him because it's so big. Keller pitches. I think he's better at home. I don't think it's by a ton, but he's, they take advantage of the big park because it does exist. It is a thing that's real. So I think that's helped quite a bit. But I think it's more telling on the offensive side that they have built a team that can hit a home run anywhere versus a team that, you look at some of the old Royals teams, like the 2015 Royals, good offense. I mean, they obviously won the World Series, good enough for that. But if you put them in Camden Yards before they moved the left field fence back, they would have hit home runs. That offense would have hit home runs. They didn't hit home runs in Kansas City. Okay, that's fine. But they built a team that can hit home runs anywhere. And I think that's a huge first step offensively. But that's where I'm optimistic about that side. Pitching side, I need to see more.
You mentioned the young guys, and our buddy Clint Scholes said, Singer 3.49 ERA as a starter, Lynch 4.07 FIP. Those two numbers aren't terrible, and I would agree.
Yeah.
And you can put in, Bubic. I like the pedigree of those three, and if Kowar's off to the bullpen, if they get three starters, then Bolin is in the bullpen, and all five of those guys end up being a part of the big leagues. And I've said time and time again, if you get one top of the rotation guy, one bottom of the rotation guy, and one reliever, out of those five, you have beat the odds. And there's still optimism that three of them are starters. You can't rule out Kowar. I probably will rule out Kowar as a starter.
I would.
As a reliever, we've seen him look like ammunition. And Bolin's still got ability. He's had a rough go of it since he came back from the surgery so far, but give him some time. The numbers before were very good. And so there's a lot of optimism for that. That will be a good sign, and we'll see what they can do with the others. I want one more thing I want to hit upon because I want to give some numbers here because it's a little bit of a positive, but then we're going to talk about a negative. All right, 12 RBIs today from rookies. This was talked about on the broadcast today. Only other time the Royals have had 12 RBIs from rookies in a single game, an 18-9 win. Game 2 of a doubleheader at Milwaukee on August 21st of 1995. That was a time when they had just blown up the team as well and turned to the young guys. Johnny Damon had 4, but listen, here's what's different, or is it?
Hang on, I'm going to guess. Is Brent Cookson one of them?
No. Johnny Damon had 4. Henry Mercedes had 3. Michael Tucker had 2. And then 1 each from Edgar Caceres, Keith Lockhart, and John Nunnally. Were the 12 RBIs today a much better sign than that was. I mean, obviously Johnny Damon would go on to be very good. I do think this is better, right? 95 didn't end up turning into a whole lot other than the 99 offense, the turn of the century offense of Damon and Dye and Sweeney. You put those guys in there. The only guy that, Michael Tucker went in a deal. I don't even remember who it was for, but it was a prominent deal of, he went in the Jermaine.
He was Dye. Yeah.
So two of those pieces, the rest of them, I mean, John Nunnally hit a home run in his first at bat. That's interesting. And, he's a footnote from that standpoint, but was a nice Rule 5 pick. But really none of those other guys, I don't think either did. I know none of them did much for the Royals, and I don't think brought much back. There was two guys.
Lockhart was in that Dye deal too.
Was he? Okay. And so,
so
this looks a lot better, right? Yeah. This is a lot better than that. Here's another one. All right. So Friday night, the entire starting lineup, including the pitcher and DH, all signed by the Royals. All Royals guys. It's only the third time in the history of the team that this has happened. And I think this is a combination of the TV broadcast and Kurt Nelson for the Royals Hall of Fame. I'm going to give you some numbers here. So only the third time it's happened a week ago, right? Basically the same crew. And before that, it was September 19th of 1990, right? From the Royals' first home game. And by the way, that was 7,834 games into the organization's existence before that happened, right? Wow. It had been over 11,000 games before it happened again, like 11,600. And I actually, my buddy Kurt gave me this number. Here's who it was that first time it happened. It was Gary Thurman in right. This is the batting order. Kevin Seitzer at second. George Brett at DH. Bo Jackson was in left field. Jeff Conine was at first base. Mike McFarland was catching. Bill Pecota was at short. Sean Barry was at third. Brian McRae was in center. And Kevin Appier was your pitcher. That was the first time of 3 times that had ever happened. All great stuff, right? Love those numbers. Thanks to the broadcast, for the folks I want to make sure I give his name. God, I'm drawing a blank. Oh, he used to be with the Royals now. David Holtzman. Holtzman does a great job on those numbers. Kurt Nelson of the Royals Hall of Fame does a great job with those numbers. And those are a combination of those guys working between the names and everything that's going on. But I got it again, another tweet. Matt says, for your podcast tonight, here's the topic. If this new batch of rookies do make it all the way and win, are we setting ourselves up again for a massive rebuild later, since all of it is coming up together? Importance of this continuous drafting, no off years for JJ and Dayton Moore. Yeah. Yes. Like, that is the scary part. And I think that is, to circle back, and I don't want to belabor the whole point on whether or not anyone's going to get fired, but it is, I mean, I'm not going to take away any credit for what they've done, but it's, and maybe it's as simple as, and I shouldn't be too critical of it. Maybe it's as simple as no battle plan survives combat, right? Dayton Moore said to me in 2018 at spring training, as they were embarking on what we all knew was a rebuild, well, this time I want to build it back to where we sustain it, that we're in it for the long haul and it's not just a window. That is the one scary thing, is like they're all hitting at the same time. Within a year or two, all of these guys, are going to be, if Waters comes up this year at the end of the year and then plays next year, like, they're all on the exact same timeline, which can you possibly see this organization moving those guys, if they're good, little by little, to sustain this thing? Or if they just thrown their hands up and said, we tried it, and that was really putting a governor on what we were doing. We just got to get good players up there and live with it. If it's a window, it's a window.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's part of it. I really do. But I mean, they're actually developing bats now consistently. And if you look up and down the system, I mean, it's not just the guys who are there. Look, you've still got Tyler Gentry, we mentioned, Nick Lofton, Drew Waters, Samad Taylor they got from Toronto for Whit Merrifield. I think he's a guy who I don't think he's a big piece, but he could be part of a future offense. Michael Garcia, we mentioned. There's Diego Hernandez down in Colombia. They've got hitters. They've got guys who they can layer in.
Boy, are you that convinced? Because like Garcia is Nicky Lopez part.
No, I'm not.
Okay?
He's just a name. He's just one of those guys.
Right. But I know we as Royals fans fall into the same trap that organizations do. We get to know all these guys, so we go, they've got 20 prospects.
Right.
And one of the best things that general manager once told me is, you look at your team, you always think you got 10 or 20 guys. You look at their team, you think they got 2. Right? Yeah. Like, I mean, I'll buy Gentry. I'm not even sold on Lofton. Like, you know, he's.
I think he's got a big league floor, but it's not a huge ceiling. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not convinced he's more than Mitch Meyer. Are you?
I could see that. I could see. I mean, I don't know. I think for me,
Mitch Meyer can be had for a league minimum every year.
Exactly.
So
I think
I appreciate saving $1 million here or there with young guys, having guys that can be your mortar, your filler guys at the league minimum. And this is more important in pitching when you carry 13 pitchers all the time, right? You know, that does add up as far as being able to spend on one premium guy to finish off the rotation or to finish off the batting order. So I'm not trying to poop it away and say it doesn't matter, but I do believe that they're making hitters better, but I'm not ready to just hang my hat on it.
No, I'm not either. That's why I think the bigger thing is it's not even so much development, and also didn't mention Gavin Cross and Caden Wallace, the guys they just drafted. So we'll see how that goes. But the thing they need to do, I think, more than they've done in the past, they need to be aggressive with extensions. Because if they had come to Eric Hosmer in 2012 when he was struggling and said, I'm going to give you 7 years and 89 million, I don't know, doesn't matter, he would have signed that deal. I think we're happy that he didn't at this point. I feel like, I don't know, maybe we're not because they struggled so much after. But if they would have been a little more proactive with some of these deals, they wouldn't have had everybody hit free agency after 2017. And some of it, they gave Escobar a deal that pushed him to 2017. But I think they need to look at this group and say, okay, what 4 players do we have that we cannot afford to leave in 2020? What is it? 7, 8, whatever it is. And say, we want to keep these guys through 2031 because we're going to have another crop come up in 4 years, whatever. I hope it's not that long, but and we want them to be the veterans for that young crop. And they have never been fast on the extensions outside of Salvador Perez. Everybody else seems to be, well, we're going to go year to year, and then we're going to talk to them after year 4. Well, after year 4, they're 2 years away from free agency, and they're eyeing $100 million. Maybe they don't get it, but it just every year you wait, it gets harder to sign these guys. And so I think that's one of the biggest things they need to do. Come to Bobby Witt Jr. Say, look, Austin Riley just signed 10 years. What is it? 212, 221. I don't know. Doesn't matter. Reasonable money, and say, we're going to offer you something. Wander Franco was 11 and 189. I think it was. They need to be doing these deals,
but you got to be sure. So
yes, you have to be sure.
Those guys are you sure about?
I feel good personally about Bobby Witt. I think he's the guy you say, even if he's the third baseman, he hits enough.
301 on base.
I know.
And again, early, and I expect him to get better, and that number's been going up, although it's kind of stalled here at 3
a little bit
for a little while. I expect like $200 million over 10 years. If what you've got is a 300 on base guy, which I'll immediately say, let's call it 315. Because if you can be 301 as a rookie, I think you've got a minimum 15 more points there. Although we've seen guys have their best year be rookie year. In fact, the Royals kind of make an art of it sometimes. But even at 315, right? We love all the tools. Man, Mondesi, I remember when Adalberto Mondesi was there was actually people on the radio in this town saying, Patrick Mahomes and Mondesi, we have the 2 most exciting players in both sports. No, you had one. And so and maybe there's enough of an indicator there that you can't allow yourself. Maybe I'm way too gun shy because of how the Mondesi side of things have gone. And so I'm being foolish, and no, you jump on this guy, you get him signed because, I'm fine, but I'm with you. I remember Dayton Moore said to me when he first came to the organization, and one of my first conversations with him, I said, "Where are you at on extending guys?" Right, like putting contracts, because the A's won't do it. He said, "Listen, I'd rather be a year late than a year. I'd rather be a year late and pay more and know what I'm getting, than a year early and get burnt." And so it would signal either a change in Dayton Moore's view of things, or somebody else, or JJ Picola carrying more weight and saying this is how we've got to do it. The analytics side winning over. I mean, it would be a real about face for Dayton Moore to jump on something this early.
Sure. And let me give you a number on Bobby Witt. Since
Okay.
they changed hitting coaches, not including today, because I'm on Baseball Reference, they don't have today's stats yet. 276, 320, 490. So you're already starting to see a bit of an improvement.
800 plus, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and we can argue about his defense at shortstop. I think he could be fine there. I think he could be elite at third base, personally. But wherever it is, he's going to give you either plus defense at a farther down the spectrum, or average at best defense at way up the spectrum. But if you can get those numbers, and hoping, obviously, that you can't just assume everybody gets better, but I feel like Bobby Witt Jr. is the guy I think you can see taking a step next year, maybe 2 years. I think I'd feel comfortable with that. I do. I think that what he's done with the new hitting coaches, and that's from day one, which, I mean, you don't just immediately, oh, the new hitting coaches are here, I'm totally different. So, if you want to push it back, I don't know, 2 weeks, let's say,
right?
The numbers since then are, it's about the same. It's 272. But yeah, he had a little bit of a slump when he came back from the wrist, but whatever, roughly the same. I think I feel okay about him. The rest, I don't know.
I think I actually feel better about Melendez.
I think I do. Yeah.
I think what scares you is you don't know where to play him.
Right, the position thing. Because if he's a catcher, that's risky to give a long-term deal. They've done it well with Perez. So,
but to me, that's what opens the door to get him cheaper.
No, so you're right. Yeah.
I go back to what we talked about early, and that is, if you believe that bat is left field bat, then you can sign him right now, because he's man without position right now. And you can say, we can give you this kind of generational wealth, but you got to sign right now. We believe in you. We'll find the spot for you, but I mean, you can't lie to I don't think lying to the kid like, oh, nobody called about you, nobody has interest, but we're still going to give you this money. Yeah, you can't do that crap. But I mean, I think the fact that they're smart with the agent to go, because I had some conversations with some folks about when Hunter Dozier signed, and people are like, oh, it's a great deal or it's a terrible deal. Well, the back end of it, it's actually, it's not a bad deal, because it's not that much, because unless he gets the incentives and those kind of things. And I think there were some people who are like, well, we're not really sure where he plays. And that's why Hunter Dozier and his agent said, we'll take it, because on the open market, nobody's buying this defense. That does suppress it. You got to know that he can hit. But even then, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, because I keep wondering why the Royals won't go get the Phillies slugger who was with the Cubs and the Nationals last year. All bad. Kyle Schwarber has been a guy that the last couple of offseasons, I'm like, Kyle Schwarber. The Phillies paid real money for him this year, but for the last couple of years, I'm like, why not go trade for Kyle Schwarber? I mean, he's going for nothing. If you think he's got that kind of thunder, he's a $20 million player on the open market now. At least Kyle Schwarber is now. I don't know why he wasn't last year, but he wasn't. He was on a 1 year, like $8 or $9 million deal. Then I think Melendez is there, but really that's the only two we're talking about right now, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, if you're talking the 9 to 10 year deal, I think that you could say, hey, we're going to give Vinny Pasquantino 6 and 28 or something, whatever. But that just gets to cost control really more than actually locking these guys up. But, you got to trust your evaluations, which have not been great for what it's worth with this organization. But you've got to trust yourself to say, I know this guy is a guy we want on our team for years, because the best teams do that. They just do. They get these guys signed quickly. And it's not always, sometimes it bites you a little bit. Like Fernando Tatis Jr., the Padres are happy to have him, but he hasn't played a game this year. And they gave him 14 years and $341 million before was it last season or 2 years ago? It must have been last season. That's a long time, and he hasn't played a game. They're not unhappy about it because they know the talent when he's on the field. He's been better than any Royal has been. So it's not apples to apples, but I think that they have to trust their evaluation. If they believe in their evaluations, again, maybe they shouldn't, but if they do, they should find those guys, and that helps to extend that turns it from a window to a long-term team because they've got these guys forever.
And Catman made a good point. He said, won't give him, talking about MJ Melendez, won't give him an extension unless he gets vaxxed, which to your point, not to make it about vaccination, like I think they gave the extension to Whit Merrifield based on who they thought he was going to be in the clubhouse and who they thought he was going to be as a leader. And then they ended up having him lead 10 guys not going to Toronto. That's a tough thing when you've got the most guys that won't go play. And so I think that is a legit concern. Hopefully the pandemic gets behind us and we're just talking about, that's not an issue, but it does speak to, what Scott Pioli in football would call, is football important to you, right?
Yeah.
Is baseball important to you? And I think that's a very great point. I can't give it to you because I don't know if you're going to be missing every Toronto trip. Right.
That's
and
true.
I'm not because one thing that is a fact, you pay a guy that carries weight in the clubhouse. They all want to get paid. And if a guy's getting paid, he's a leader. Well, I got to listen to this guy. He's making $15 million a year. I mean, that is a big part of what your status is. Your stats are a big part, but also your paycheck is a big part. And if you pay him, you're empowering him even more as one of the leaders in your clubhouse. And so I do think that's a bigger point than some people certainly would want to admit, but I think it's the reality of where they go.
The other thing, not to get too deep into that side of it, but I think we've seen that if they need to go to Toronto for more reasons than just a random 4-game series in July, they'll find a way.
Yeah.
That seems to be the message that we've seen over the last few weeks.
Yeah, which makes the point that not for you guys even more clear.
Right.
Which
exactly.
Which shows the disconnect that's there. All right, that's going to do it for us. Remember, if you're catching us via the podcast later in the week, we stream live Sunday nights at 10 p.m. And whenever an emergency or the news breaks that we need to, we'll come on live with it. But Sunday nights at 10 p.m. is when we stream live. You can be a part of the broadcast on YouTube, on Facebook, and on Twitch. And we can, of course, see your comments as well. If you've heard us referencing different people's comments, it's because they're in the chat room. And, of course, we'd always appreciate your likes, your loves, the subscriptions, if you'd subscribe to the podcast via the podcast, but also on YouTube. All helps us. Don't cost you nothing. We would really very much appreciate it. Hey, David, great work, man. I love having you on the radio show. We have David on every Friday in the 2 o'clock hour. His Inside the Crown is must read. If you have not checked out his work there, make sure you do it, InsideTheCrowd.com. You can see his blog. He's got great material up there. And as always, a great conversation on the radio show that Friday, hour 1. You can catch our conversation with David Lesky every week via that podcast as well. David, thanks so much for filling in for Rany, man. I always love talking Royals baseball with you, buddy.
Yeah, definitely. I hope I was as good as Ryan O'Hearn pinch hitting.
You were far better. So for Rany, who's on vacation, for David Lesky, I'm Soren Petro saying thanks very much for joining us here on Kaufman Corner.